Okay, so we're going to start. We're going to talk about SDS Part Automation and using SDS Part Tools. So I'm going to bring in some part tools. So we'll go 40 minutes. We'll have a Q&A if possible. I will run longer than 40 minutes if I need to, so I don't mind that. And we'll get it on YouTube. And we're looking at these tools here. And these are the tools that we're going to be working with today. And typically when I talk about doing a webinar or any webinar I do, I start with really fundamental things, but then I expand it into a greater idea from it. So I'm going to turn the page. And what we're going to be doing is talking about the SDS automation document when we're placing components. We're going to talk about some part tools, tools that we can make to help us lay cable and bus in Lightning WorkPoints. We're also going to work with some work geometry in model states. All right, so these are the items we're going to try and hit on. But first, I think most of you have seen this document. This is the document. It's a fundamental document. It's one that helps us add the work geometry to our components so that we can run our cable, bus, all the tools that SDS P4I Physical for Inventor works with. So if I kind of come through here, there's a page in here that was added recently back in July, work geometry with model states, and we will be talking about this page here, and we will be going into more detail on placing our work points and our work geometry as we're placing our cable, bus, or lightning protection in this case. If we go to the end of this document, this is the latest document that was released in July, and you'll see that I have these example of 4 tools here, and these are the tools we're going to be working with. All right, so this is the document that we're really focused on today, and we're going to come back, and you can see that I got a bus tool for an A-frame here. I got a slider cable tool. Some of you guys have seen some of these tools that I've done already, but I'm putting them all together in one webinar. And then I'm going to get into the model states with the tools. Cable loop tool. Here's the slider tool. This is where I'm using it in the example. And I've got a bus tool as well. So we're going to get into these tools. So I'm going to come into my Inventor. What I'm running today is Inventor 2024, and I am running, I think, 8.4. Yeah, 8.4 SDS. And the Inventor 2025 release should be out in January. So if you want to be here for January, we'll have the 2025 release, maybe middle of January, end of January. So what we're going to first look at is some the bus tools. We reviewed the tools a little bit there, but I am going to run bus examples and some cable examples, just to remind us on what's going on. So when we talk about work geometry for automation, we are talking about work points in our parts. So if I open up this part, we all know that we're adding work points to this part. So you can see I have a work point cable and I got a work point guide point. So when I run a cable, it's going to be going through these 2 points. It will destinate at cable and guide point here. So I use the word destinate. That's not a common word. If I'm placing this cable, I can if I move a fitting, it's odd. If I move a fitting, I can always update my cable or my bus and we'll reconnect looking at those points. If we're placing our items by picked surfaces, things like that, we don't have as much control on how our component is being placed. Same with bus fittings. If we're picking cylindrical surfaces, same with bus fittings, we're not getting as many options as we want to pick for placing our components. Same as with the bus here. I'm going to come over to this location. We're going to work in here for a bit. I'm going to place a bus in here. We'll come up to settings. And most of this we know. This is just basic. I'm going to place a 4-inch round bus with 0 offset. So I'll hit save on that. And I'll pick 2 fittings. So we can see that the bus is ending on that work point called bus. All right. It also had this fitting also has a work axis on it as well, and it tells SDS what direction that the bus is going to come into it. So you can see the bus axis there. So that's really how it works. And when we do an offset to that, that is when we get into how far beyond that work point it goes. So if we put an offset in here, 12, we want units. It doesn't have to be inches. It could be 12 meters if you wanted, centimeters, whatever you want. I'm going to stick with inches today because I'm used to it. And I'm going to have the same number on both sides. And I'll delete that run. And I'll place that run in again, and you'll see I got the 12 on both sides. So now I have the offset from that work point, and we're all familiar with that. So what I want to do is come in here, and we're going to say that we want to add a piece of bus. Let's see where I'm at here. I want to come over here. So I'm going to look here. I'm going to want a piece of bus, and I just want it sticking on this a certain length. I don't want to change the length. What I have out here is a SDS tool. So I'm going to find that tool in my browser. And I will pick feature priority and find browser. And there's my tool. So here's my bus tool. I'm going to open that bus tool up. And you can see all it is a work point and a work axis, a bus axis, and that is it. That's all this tool is. And the purpose of this tool is so that we can place a bus and use this location. All right. So if I come up and I want a piece of bus, I can say I want a piece of bus from this fitting, and then I have to pick it in the browser because I don't have a body to pick. And I'm going to pick this, and it's going to run that piece of bus to that tool. All right, and we have the one foot offset. And if we want a different offset, we can add that different offset anytime we want. We can edit that bus. And maybe I want 16 on, or maybe I want 1 meter on this side, and I'll apply. And you can see it's extended 1 meter. So what we will often want to do, we want to put a bend in our bus line, and we can do it with bend with elbows, or we can do a bend with the SDS tool. This is really bending the pipe. It's a continuous pipe length, and it's running that bend. So I'm going to delete this bus, and now I'm going to run that bus again, but this time I'm going to pick fitting. So this fitting is a 0 offset. So I'm going to make sure my first pick is a 0 offset. So I'll come back up here. I'm going to say 0. And I don't need units because it's 0. Doesn't matter if it's centimeters or meters or inches. And this side I'm going to leave at 12, and I'll hit save. Now I'm going to pick multiple fittings, and what I'm going to have is where this point is going to determine where my bend is. So now I can place my bend where I want it to be. If I don't pick that, it will be a certain spot. So if I just pick 2 fittings to add round bus from here to here, without picking that, it's going to put in the bend where it wants. All right. And although it looks like it's right here, the point here is what will be offset from that. So if I pick that again, and I'm going to pick that work point this time, so I'm going to pick multiple fittings, pick fittings to add bus. I'm going to pick this fitting again. Now I'm going to pick that bus. I got to pick it in the browser, that bus work point, and then I'm going to pick here, and I'll hit enter. And you'll see a different bend location. All right. And as always, if we pick the opposite direction, if we come in here, and let's take that bus, and I'm going to make this 12 inches, and this one's 0. And I'll save that. And I'll place this bus here. If I just pick the two fittings, you'll see it from here to here. And you see another location of where it's being placed. So depending on the direction of pick is going to show you where it's bending. So I'm bending either from that fitting to this fitting, either with that work point, which is the center one, or without the work points, it gives me this one. So by having this pipe tool in here, this SDS bus tool in there, I can adjust where I want that bend, right? So I can be more precise on my bend location. If, on the other hand, I am using fittings to place that bus, let's look at this one here. You can see I got a elbow fitting here. Let's change this. You see I have an elbow fitting here. And what I'm doing now, I am constraining, I'm bringing my bus into that work point, right? And if you look at that work point, we look at a plan, a profile, change our view. You can see where that point is. It's at the equal distance between the column here coming down and the tube here coming down. So that's the equal distance. So if I place a piece of bus to attach to this, I want a weld point on this surface here. This is the weld surface. If I want to have that point, I want to have a offset. Did that even work? From this point to here. That's going to be my offset. So let's find out what that offset is. So if I want to come from here to here, the offset is 6 inches to there, and maybe it's 2.6 here. Okay. Got to mute someone. All right, so that's what's going on there. So we got to offset if I want to go from there to there. So I want to measure that again. I forgot what the number was already. So I'm going to go from this point, and I'm going to offset to this rib here. So it's 3.625. So I'm going to take that number, I'm going to right click and copy that, and I will put that in my clipboard. So I have that number. So I'm going to come in, come back to shaded view. So that is how this is created. So I've got the elbows and I have a negative offset. If I ever want to see what that negative offset is, I can come up to my edit tool. I can edit this run, and you'll see what that negative offset I'm using here is 1.5. And that's getting me to the where I want it on this. See if it's still 1.5 here as well. It's 3.4. So I don't know if 1.5 because it's on both ends, 1.5 times 2. So what I'm doing here is when I'm placing this, let's go find this in the browser. You can see it's an assembly. I'm going to right click and open this up, and typically this is what I do. I'll make a phantom assembly of my elbow location. If I have 2 elbows, I'll make a phantom assembly for that length. So I'll place my elbows in where I want them to be, right? And I'll constrain the 2 elbows. You can see the constraints here. And then I'll place the bus using normal SDS tools to place that bus. And once I place that, then I will place that assembly into here, line it up. So I'm only really running this length here, these 2 lengths here. So if I delete this length, it's going to be there. So I'm going to come in here. I'll create my bus. My first one is going to be from the clipboard. I'm going to use that number, which really is a little bit long. So I understand now why it's 0.5. So I'm going to use the 0.5 number. I'll go negative. And then this one I want be 12 inches. And my overhang is my first one. So I'll hit save. My negative one's the first one. And I will place my bus. Okay, so we place it the opposite way if it didn't work. There it is. So now I have it the wrong offset on the wrong side. I can edit that run or rerun it. So I'll delete that run and I'll run it the opposite way. Always remember, if it doesn't run the way you like it the first try picking the pieces in the opposite direction. So I'm going to take this, I'll put it here. And I'll put this one here. And we'll pick it here. And there we go. So that's placing with that bus tool. And I'm placing the bus tool by moving where the location of the bus tool is on here. I can change where my bend point is. If I don't use the bend point here, I can work with it in two different directions. So that's working with the bus point there. So let's go look at here. We're going to use the bus point tool here as well. I have this A-frame here, and I'm going to attach this A-frame to my little bus island here. And I want to add that bus, that A-frame. So I'm going to come in. I'm going to come into bus tools, and I'm going to add a tap fitting. All right. So add a tap fitting. I'm going to browse into my components and fittings. I've got assembly fittings, and I got my low side A-frame. And I'll say OK to that. And I'm going to place it on this bus pipe here. So you can see how that is made. Let's go look at how that part is made and how it was placed. We're not finished with it yet, but I want to review it first. So we have the A-frame. And what SDS does, it goes through and it looks at the browser. I'm going to collapse the browser. It looks through the browser and picks the first item it sees. When it sees that first item, that's the item it's going to constrain to the pipe with. All right. So that's that first item. So that first item is the bus tool in this case. If we look closer too, otherwise the first item is the fitting here. So typically you would make this with the first item, probably that top fitting, and it will place it for you. But do you always want to place it that way? Sometimes you need to place it because you don't have the pipe ready yet. We'll go back to here, and you can see here that I don't have a piece of pipe overhanging here because I don't have a destination yet for that pipe. So if I come in here and I want to pick a location here, if I want to go from here to here, I need a location to connect to. All right, I need that location to connect to. I don't have one here, so I could put a bus tool in space here, floating in space. But what I did in here is rather I put the bus tool in the top here. So why did I do that? Well, what we can do, we can combine model states, we can with our assemblies, or we can combine with positional representations. So I'm going to come in here, I'll come in my representations. And positional representations in model states are based on occurrence or instance. So they're instance items. So anytime I place this fitting, this assembly, it's going to be on that instance. So I can have different positions of these items. So if I come over in here at my position representation, I'll hit bottom, and you can see now it's at the bottom. So my bus tool just came to the bottom. Now I'm going to come up here. So what's going on behind the scenes? We'll open up the bus tool, and you can see the mates turning on and off here. So I'll come into the bottom. These mates are enabled, and these mates are suppressed. Come to the top, and it's the other way around. Okay, so that's what's happening. So we can move that bus tool to where we want it to be by using positional constraints, positional representations. Positional representations are lighter for the memory. for the video card, but mostly for the RAM. It's lighter for the memory than a model state would be. Now, model states are lighter than what they appear to be, but they're not as light as a positional representation. So I'm going to close this. So let's come in here. I'm going to look at this assembly. I'll find it in the browser. I'm going to expand it. And I'm going to say, well, I don't want it here like that. I want to change my view representation. So I'll come into my view representation. I'll change it. And I'm going to change it to bottom. And there it is. So there I have my view representation. And now I can center it and get it to the right location here. Because when we pick something, it's hard for us to find any specific location on a pipe. We can't say, I want it to be 3 inches from something. What is relative, and how would we put that in here? So I'm going to go back to this tool, and I'm going to look at my offset here. So my offset, if I edit that, it's working off of this plane here. So this is the plane it recognized to place that pipe, and that's where it's placed it. So it's 345.399, whatever it is. So it's garbage number, but that is the number we have, right? So what I want to do is I want to move it in line here. So I'll come up for distance, and I'll measure this location to this location. And my X direction is 14 number, whatever that number is. So now I'm going to come in and change this value to that. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to add that 14, and now I'm in line. If I want to come in here and change it, look, if you look here, it's exactly 360,000. So I could change that number to that number so I don't have ugly numbers in my data, but it doesn't really matter here. So now I'm going to place my pipe. I'm going to change my offsets again. I'm going to change my offset. This one is going to be 1 meter. I'm just playing with inches and meters just to show we can. And I'll place my fitting. So I'm going to place this fitting to this. And there we go. So I'm just showing how you can work with that tool. The other tool I want to look at is in the cables. So first of all, we're going to come in, we're going to look at the circuit breaker island, and I'm going to open that up. So there's the circuit breaker island. I have some fittings here and some cables coming running down here. And over on this side, I have the same thing, and I have this wasp nest here. So this is going to be fun when we get to here, but we're going to first look at, we're not going to look at that wasp nest right away. We're going to look at this situation here. If you look at this, I have 2 of the same fittings. These are identical fittings because they are the same part. If you look closely, I'm going to zoom out a bit, you can see the work point. Let's change my selection set. You can see a work point here is on the bottom, and this work point's on the top. So what's going on there? So it's the same. It's not the same. We were working with model states here. It's not the same as positional rep, but we can't do positional rep in this because it's a single part. So we're forced to use model states. But model states came in 2022, Inventor 2022, and until this has happened, we could not do this easily. Anyway, you could do it different ways, but this is very easy now. So here, if you come up here, I got guide point flip. So I have a model state guide point flip. Here's my guide point. It's flipped over here. I go to primary, and my guide point's over here. So my direction of my cable is going to come in from the right-hand side, and on this one, it's going to come in from the left-hand side. So now I have two positions for this, so that anytime I place it, I can adjust where that guide point is. And it helps me place my cable. So come into here, and because I got my guide point, I have a guide point here coming out of the lug. I got a guide point here coming out of that fitting that we just looked at, and I got a guide point on the top of that fitting because I want to end my ground wire at my lowest fitting. That's generally how I do it. I end it at the lower fitting, and then later on I worry about connecting to the ground grid. It might not be a continuous wire, but it will totalize in the end the way I want it to totalize. So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to delete that cable. And I'll come up to my settings and grab a 4-aught cable, I guess. I'm just going to grab one. Here's a copper one. Change the sag a little bit and hit save. So now I can place my cable. So if we have a guide point on the exit here, the guide point's going to be on the exit here because we're coming down from the top, and then the guide point is on the entrance as we come into the fitting here. So I have a flow to work with this. So if I come in and pick fittings to add cable, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to pick this fitting, and this fitting, and I'll hit enter. Because the flow is coming down to that guide point, I can do this. I can do this without a guide point, but the guide point gives us an ability to have more options on what we do, and it also straightens out the cable as it comes through that fitting, so it looks a little bit straighter. See, it's a little bit straighter on the bottom because that's where the guide point is, but you can see how that's straighter. If I came in the opposite way, I'll delete that cable. If I came in from the bottom here, so I got the guide point here, guide point against the direction here, so it would be fine for the cable to run from that point to that point, but it won't make it to this point, so it will have a fail. So I'm going to come from here to here to here, and most likely it will fail. And in this case, it passed. So I'm always surprised myself, all right? But that's great. So we're able to place that and have a direction on that guide point. And that is in that document. Let's go back to that document just to remind us. If we come into that document, this is what I'm added. And here back in July is this document here. So I'm going to come in here. We're going to look on the other side. We're going to look at this hornet's nest. So you can see this hornet's nest. I'm going to turn off some visibility in here. So I have my, let's see, guide point flip. I turn off this visibility. So the guide point flip, let's take a look at my guide point slider, I should say. It's guide point slider. I'm going to open that up. And what this is just a group of sketch points and work points. I got my work points on my sketch point. I'm going to save this as a different name in case I mess it up. And we'll save as and call it junk or something. Remember, this is going to be copied to our, I don't know how you spell junk, but that's a new way. I'm going to, this will be saved to the YouTube site, so everything we do, we can watch it in there. So all this is a simple model of sketch points and work points. So there's no constraints in here. So I'm going to come into the sketch. I'm going to edit the sketch. If you look at the sketch, all I put this box in here is I just put dimensions on there just so I had a reference, so I had an idea of where I am at when I'm working with this tool. If I move I can drag my, that's bad. If I drag my work points around, my sketch points around, I update it, my work point moved to that sketch point, all right? So I'll do that again. I'll edit that sketch. I'll move it down here, and that sketch point is moved to that point. So that's what we're doing for this tool. So I'm going to come back into here. That's why I call it junk. And I put that tool in here. I just use normal Inventor practice to put that tool in here. I'm going to expand it. And I have my constraints. I constrained it here, here, off of that one. And I got a flush constraint. Okay. So that's the way I placed it in here. So if I want to place these cables, I'm going to turn off the visibility of this one. What is this cable here? That's turn off visibility. Okay, so now I want to place my cable down through this nest. You can see that I got a offset here going on here. So if I try to place a cable in here, I'm going to use pick points to do this. So I'm going to come up and I'm going to pick points to add my cable. So I'm going to say I want to come from here. I'm going to just pick points. And now I want to come into here. And then I can come in and start picking my fitting points and come down to here. And there's a point down and buried inside here. I'm going to pick that point there and hit enter. So I can pick my cable and put it in like that. Now, a lot of people don't like a cable going through steel. And I wouldn't want that either. But I'm just showing you that this is something that you could normally do. If I didn't have that work point, I might be able to run that cable this way as well. So if I delete that and just pick my points from the fitting here and came down here and so on, I can bring it in that way as well, right? But I may not want that. I may want to work around that point. So what I did here in this case, I'm going to turn off that tool, the slider tool. I'm going to turn off the visibility of that. I'm going to turn on the visibility of this one. I always can't find visibility for some reason. So I'm going to open this one. This is what I did with this one. I'm going to open this. And here I put two. I made another secondary one, and I just added a second nest of work points. So now I have a ton of work points. I have that wasp nest of work points because I want to bend around that. So I'm going to close this off. So now when I'm working in here and I want to place something, I'm going to take this tool, slider 2. I can edit the tool. Well, let's first look at the run. So I'm going to turn off this one. I don't think I need this one anymore. Well, why don't I delete that cable because it's wrong. All right. So I'm going to turn on these cables that I have turned off. Visibility. And you can see that what I did, I picked work points so I could bend around here. All right. So if I come in and I'm going to edit this slider tool, and I'm going to look at, well, why don't we turn these off again? I'm going to turn these guys off again. I'm going to run a new cable. All right, so let's run a new cable. So I got two work points here. You can see that at different height, different thicknesses, different locations. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to pick point, pick point. Now I'm going to come way out here, pick this point. Right, so now I'm bending it out, and I'm using that same one. They're in plane here. I'm going to pick this point if I can pick it. I wonder why it's so difficult to pick with a webinar on. All right, so now I picked that point. Now I want to come back in to where my fitting is. So I'm going to just pick the fitting point. I think it's because of the sketch points visible. And then there I come down here. So why am I calling it a slider? So I come in here. I'm going to show you why it's called a slider. I have that bent the way I want it to be. It's coming around. And let's say I don't really like it so much. Maybe I want to move this point here where it's coming here. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to edit that slider. Let's minimize this guy. I'm going to edit this slider. This is the one I'm going to edit. So I'm going to come into my sketch 2 or sketch 4 here. I'm going to edit that. So you can see I have a work point here where that cable went through, and I got a work point here. So these are the 2 points I picked. So I'm going to say I want this one just to be over here a little bit further. All right. So now I'm picking here, here, and down here. I'm going to update that, return to my model, and you can see that work point is out here now. So how do I get there? I can come in, I'm going to save it, save and save often, and I'll update my cable. I'm going to hit update cable, grab that guy. Now that cable went through that point and it's moved its position. Same as this one here. So if I'm running a new cable in here, I'm going to say I'm going to run a cable here. I'm going to run it. You can pick through objects if you notice that by picking my point. It's a little bit sloppy to pick these with the sketch point on. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to move out here, and now I'm going to come back to my fitting work point and come down through there and pick my fitting work point there, and away we go. So there I ran that. It might not be where I want it to run. You can see how I can move work points around to solve that problem. So if I came in here, I'm going to right click, edit. I'm going to edit the sketch 3, that's the inside one. And maybe I want to move this point over a little bit further and this point up a bit. Okay, so I exaggerated a bit. And I'll come in, exit. Now that I have that position, I update cable. It might not be what we want, but it's good for show. And you can see I've updated and it's gone through those points for me. So the work point slider tool allows me to slide the work points to where I need to do it. Excuse me. So if you ever watched one of the webinar videos from the past, I'm going to bring one up here. Of course, I get advertisements. So that slider tool, that was being done in this exercise here. So when I had the, when I was running this cable here, I was doing the same thing as that slider. If you ever watched this video, I'll put these links in the chat. But if you ever watch that video, you'll see me sliding the sketch points around, which the work points are attached to the sketch points. Okay. I saw some comments and I haven't yet returned to them. I'll have to read them again. So I wanted to bring that up. What else do I have here? That model state issue here, I worked with it down here. So when I'm connecting down here to that fitting, if I come in here and change my selection, so this is my fitting again. It's a similar fitting. Well, we talked about this before, but now I'm using that model states here to flip, just like what we did. But what also is in here is guide point, tap point, cable. So now I can use it as a tap point as a ground lead. So that tap point I need for a ground lead. So when I'm placing the all right, when I'm placing this coming in here, it has that tap point, so I can flip that tap point as well. So I can put that fitting in here in the orientation I want, flip it to what other side I want, find in browser, expand it, and I have that model state whichever direction I want to go, right? So the one comment here is from Michael Bruce. So if you ever wanted to do it a different way, and I've seen people do this, you come in, open this guy up. I can come into the 3D sketch, edit the 3D sketch, and I can move things around here, right? And I can move that as well in that direction. What it is, you can edit that. You can edit that in the model, right? And I can put that same edit in here and stretch things around. What happens sometimes, depending on the length of cable and that, is how many points you have to bend around. This one is something you can repeat on, update, and always be there. If I came in, if I wanted to change this cable and I had those work points moved in, or the sketch points moved in a 3D sketch, I'd have to move those sketch points again. Whereas in this one, I'd have these points that I could work with the update. So the next step is the lightning tool. The other question here, I don't know what, this is goofy. Robert, I don't know what points to create cable bug fix you're mentioning here. But I don't know of a create cable bug fix on pick points is. So if you want to send me an email after the webinar, describe it. I'd be happy to look at it. Oh, I didn't talk about the cable loop tool. Boy, we're running out of time already. I want to get on to more things, so I'm going to go through this quickly. These are 2 single runs. This is not a paired cable run, but I put a loop tool in here, and that is doing the same thing with the with the other tool of creating a loop. So let's come into this document. And what I'm doing is creating a loop in here so I can pick cable and do a loop. The reason there's 2 loops is that the cable doesn't want to cross itself. So you pick the other side of the loop to get it around. But I want to get into some more stuff. I want to get into the lightning, and we're going to come into the lightning assembly. And here's the lightning assembly. So what I've done here is I've worked with a number of people, and they're trying to lay out how to get the lighting to fix. And when you get a complicated lightning arrangement, sometimes it's better just to see what you can get easily, slide things around before you get into actually firming up what your lightning design is. So if you look at the lightning tool here, what I did, I placed it above the XY plane at the height I want. So I always know what height I want. So what I do, I mate that to the height, and then I have my height parameter in here. There's different ways of doing this. You don't have to do it this way, but this is a good example to show it. So this is 46 feet high. So when I place it in here, this is 46 high in there. And if I want to run a lightning, so I already ran one once, I can slide this around. Did I constrain this one or not? Oh, it is. No, it's not constrained. So if I wanted to grab that guy, I can do a free move and move him around to where I might want him to be. All right. And when I do an update, because the only constraint is on the base there, is bringing it in. So now I can run another lightning protection item. I can come up here and just check my lightning protection. Blah, blah, blah. I got a pretty gross 20 feet spacing. I'm going to hit save. And now I can run this now. And it should run fast, but we're presenting, so it tends to run slower. Oh boy. It should be done running by now. So in testing, because I'm presenting, it's running slower. So the other webinar, I'm going to put the other webinar that I talked about, this one, but also have this webinar But this is working with model states. So if you, this is another one that we talked about model states, and this is another webinar to watch and gets more in detail what model states and working with model states. So now you can see my run here. So now I can compare what my pieces are going to look like. So if I come in here, I'm going to open this one up. Let's change my selection. I'm going to say open that up. And now that was the first one. I want the other one. I want this one. Open this one up. All right. So now I have this one. And what I might want to do is run this. So I'm going to come into one of my rules here. I haven't showed them all, but a lightning run. Oh, I have to run it from here. I forgot. I've updated the lightning tool here. So let's come in here, logic. I'm going to run that rule. I want to run it on this one out here. I want to make it look, see what it looks like. So now I can toggle it and see it as a solid, and it's a little bit easier to see what's breaking through, right? And then I can toggle that back and I'll run that again. And I'll run it again. What I want to do is run this one. And you can see what's going on there. So just turning it to a solid surface and not is that's what that tool does. What these things are made of, if you look at what they're made of, they're made of lots of surfaces down here. You can see them all down here. So it's nice to be able to just toggle that on and off so you can see it a little bit easier. I want to get into a ground grid a bit now too. So I still got 7 minutes left. If you guys want to stay on past the hour, I'm happy to keep going on. I wouldn't mind to try and cover it all. So I'm going to try and get as much done in 7 minutes, but I'm going to keep going past the hour and just get everything recorded. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to open up my base, my assembly here. I'm going to turn off the lightning model state. Back to primary. Okay, so down here I wanted to show I was working with model states. Now we're still talking about model states and fittings and things like that. And what I have here are my T connectors, right? So you can see the T connectors in here. I know a lot of people are using a cross. The true cross has the branches at different elevations. SDS is not set to do different elevations. And with a ground grid, it's not a huge concern with a ground grid because it is buried in the way it's done. So I made it all on one elevation. So if I open that up, I want to show you what I did with this T. I'm going to open this up. And what I did, I made model states. I'm going to come up here, I'm going to expand it, and you can see I'm going to go into primary model state. There's my T. Now the true T is on different elevations, and it's cut through. I don't really need to do that for what we're doing here, but it's cut through. So I have my different suppressions of my model states. And when I go through these, if we come into the model state, I'm going to edit via spreadsheet. See, I added this part on at the end of the webinar, and I thought I'd have time. Sorry, this is only a test. Okay, you can see what I'm doing here. I got the part number changes depending on when I pick, and the description changes, and those pieces are suppressed. Those bodies are suppressed. So there's a different part number for each one. Or not different. There's different part numbers depending on that arrangement. So I'm going to close this. And we're going to run a new ground grid. So I'm going to open this ground grid. All right. And I'm going to open this up. I'm going to file, save as. This is for the webinar. And I'm going to delete the items here. Come up, I'll view that. So here's my ground grid, and it's blue, of course. So I'm going to run this ground grid. I'm going to come into my blow grade tools, create ground grid. What I've done now is I can't remove as SDS, maybe in the spring, in the update in the spring. The 2025 release should be out in January, and we should have a release in the spring as well. And hopefully in the spring we can modify this slightly. But I'm going to have my default mold part when I build it. But what I'm adding is a custom thermal shot in here. And I'm going to put a depth of grid, same as normal. My ground element tail length, I'm going to put as a quarter inch. I had it as 0.125. That was too small, but I'll show you why. We'll come into the construction. I'm going to use my current assembly. I'm going to select an existing sketch, and I'm going to create my grid and say done. So what I got now, I told it to build it below the depth of grid. So my grids, I tend to put it on the XY plane just as out of habit. It's my reference plane, top of concrete type of thing. And I'm going to build it below there. So I built it below. I don't need to see the sketch anymore. So now I have this, and what it has done, it's placed the piece we want on here, right? Now the problem is I can't turn off these ground grid molds. So if you remember the ground grid mold, it's just a cylinder, right? Just a slug. So I want to delete those. I don't need to see those. So I'm just going to come in here and delete them. They are buried inside that fitting. So I'm going to delete that. So they're gone. So now I have these guys here. So I want a tease up here. I want elbows on the corners and stuff like that. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to select these two. I'm going to right click and space here. I'm going to change my representation to, I think it's 3. I don't remember. There it is. So now I have those at that point. So I can select several of them to get what I want. All right. So down here, that was 3. This is probably 1. So I'm going to select these two, right click, representation, and I'm going to pick 1. Oh, I got it. I got a 1 in 25 chance of picking the right ones. Representation. You know, if I spent more time on doing this, because I just thought of this at the very end, like I threw this together and really quickly just to get it in here because it came to me as a way of doing things. There we go. All right. So now I've changed those. So now I can come out here. I can change this guy here. So I have 4 of these. So I got, again, 1 in a quarter chance of picking the right one. If I named them a little bit better, I could do it, you know, right hand L, left hand L or something like that. And there we go. Okay. So you can have these pieces in here, change them to what you want, and you can change as many as you want. Since you can only put in one part, right, we can change it that way, right? You could also change that slug by going into the built-in model and changing it in here. So in that model here, you can grab your ground, which one is it? Ground mold, I think, or shot. I think it's the shot material. I'm not sure offhand. You can change one of these, put model states in it, and run it that way as well by going in to the database to get at it. So it's kind of cool. I kind of like this, what I did here. I've had a lot of people asking me about doing this type of thing, so I think this is a good one as well. So I like the slider tool. I like the bus tool of changing the A-frame to the direction I want. The other tools here with the bend, I prefer to put elbows in. I think at site they would prefer elbows, and I tend to always put in elbows. But if you are bending pipe, we're able to bend it and get a shape that we might want. So it's 1:01. We're a minute past. I covered everything. Any questions that I should pick up? Let's see if I have any. Oh, I do have new questions. This is upside down. I'm sorry, I see that it's upside down. The questions are trailing different direction. Okay, the new revision is on the web. So if you can't get the new revision of the document I was showing earlier, if you don't have the newest revision in here, you need to clear out your browser and your whatever browser you're using, clear it out and bring it back and open it. You should be able to find it. So it's just your browser needs cleaning out. Okay, sometimes when we run dual cable by picking fittings, the conductors twist and cross paths. I'd have to see that to be more precise. Most often when you're doing that is that you have the work geometry not in the model correctly. The most often one is the spacer is incorrect. You're not following the rules here. That z-axis is right down the center of the spacer. That will mix it up. Sometimes I see they got cable 1 and cable 2 mixed with cable axes mixed. That's usually what I see.